Okay, so yo, I love the fact that this chapter opens up and bookends with an attack from Noelle. I mean, seriously, like, this chapter did such an amazing job of displaying just how strong and confident Noelle has become over the course of the series. Because I mean, alright, like, think about it. If you look back to the beginning of the series when we first were introduced to Noelle and her first fight with Asta and Magna versus, I forget what their names were, but when they were attacking that one village where they found the first magic stone. If you think back to that fight, and how scared Noelle was to even act during the fight when Asta and Magna were fighting off against the opponents, it's almost like we're looking at two completely different characters. I mean, really, that Noelle versus this Noelle, no question that she has done some major character growth. Because back then, she would have only attacked or, got the courage to even try to do something when she was pushed against the wall, her teammates were down, and the opponent was coming at her. Another perfect example of what I mean is when we look back to that fight against Vetto in the Underwater Temple. Remember how scared Noelle was to try to launch an attack at him? Because she thought her lack of mind control would just screw everything up. It really took her seeing everyone else get taken down and some final words of encouragement for her to finally launch her Sea Dragon's Roar, which, even though it didn't kill him, did some major damage to Vetto. And I feel like that was really Noelle's first stepping stone into her gaining more courage and more, trust in her own magic ability. Because I would argue that this fight is the last time we really see Noelle truly doubt herself and her abilities. I mean, sure, she's still nowhere near as confident as Asta, but when you look back to the Witch Force arc, the Royal Knight Exam arc, and the Reincarnation arc, in all three of those arcs, when Noelle's in a fight, you can tell that she's fighting with a newfound form of confidence that she never had before. And this is actually what ends up leading her in the Reincarnation arc to gaining her Valkyrie dress form. So I mean, yeah, like, all Noelle fans out there must be really digging this chapter because we really get to see her shine in it. And you know what, I don't want to take away from the other two characters because we do get to see Lord Pachika and Mimosa shine almost as much as Noelle in this chapter. Like, every character gets their own moments, including Vanica and her Dark Apostle, who I don't think we still got a name for, so I'm going to continue calling him Lickitung. So we get confirmation from Lord Pachika in this chapter that Vanica is able to access two types of magic, which is obviously blood magic and curse magic. Which, the blood magic goes along with the theory that I mentioned in my last video. But the question then becomes, well, which magic is truly hers? Was she born with the ability to use blood magic, and curse magic is actually Megikuo's ability, or is it vice versa? And that's really what's going to throw a wrench in that theory being true or not. Because if it is blood magic is basically Vanica's true ability, then that would mean that Megikuo doesn't go along with the theory's idea that each demon from the Space Kingdom has a magic ability that has something to do with the human body. But if we go with the idea that Megikuo's ability is blood and Vanica actually has curse magic, then it doesn't make any sense how Megikuo was able to curse Lord Pachika and Noelle's mom. Unless Tabata is going to end up revealing that instead of Megikuo being the one to curse them, it was actually Vanica whose magic was just boosted by Megikuo, and that's the reason why she was able to do such elaborate curses, like the fact that if you speak about Megikuo, you'll die from the curse, or when it comes to Lord Pachika's case, a curse that kills her over a certain period of time. Which isn't really that unheard of, because when you think back to the Great Four Spirits, they do boost the magical powers of the person they're contracted to. So it could be very well the same thing with the demons. They could not only give their contractors their demonic abilities, but they can also heavily boost their contractors' natural magic, which again isn't that unheard of. I mean, when you think back to Dante's fight against Asta, Gouch, the rest of the Black Wolves, and Yami, his gravity magic, which is most likely his natural magic. And I mean, obviously, in the Black Overworld, it's not that impossible for someone's magic to become that powerful. I mean, we look at Yami, who was keeping up with him, even in his demon form. And then, I mean, of course, there's obviously Julius, Lumiere, Lick, and the Witch Queen, who are all four extremely powerful characters. So again, I mean, it's really not that impossible for a character to become that powerful, especially if we're going to end up having Dante be the final boss out of the three Dark Triad members. Now, speaking of the Witch Queen, seeing how as she was the only prior example to blood magic we've seen in the series, I was really trying to compare the way Vanica uses her blood magic in this chapter to the way the Witch Queen uses it. And I was kind of lost as to how exactly Vanica's blood magic worked, because the way she attacked in this chapter was by using blood to summon this giant, like, beast monster thing, which I believe she called Blood Magic Beast Mannequin or something like that. But the way we understand blood magic to work in this world is that you would need a source of blood in order to use your magic. I mean, looking back to, again, the Witch Queen, in order to use her magic, she had to manipulate the blood in other people, like she did with Asta to heal his arms and then control him and make him forcibly activate his dark form. And when you look at that mannequin that Vanica summoned during the chapter, It is pretty big, which means she would need quite a lot of blood in order to actually summon it. So the question ends up becoming exactly where did she get the blood from? Now if you actually look at Vanica during the fight, you can see that she has these like dark veins coming up from the side of her neck up to her face, which, because of the fact that we don't see any black horns on her at all during the chapter, I'm assuming that means that she's not activating her dark form, which that means that's not a part of. So I guess I can kind of assume that that's her drawing her blood from her own veins. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because why would she drain her body of her own blood, especially a large amount, as you could tell she would need in order to basically summon that giant beast in order to fight with, because that would just kind of leave her weak. You know, when you lose blood, you become weaker. So I'm wondering if maybe she ended up stealing blood from the Dark Apostle that she brought with her, since it was already trapped by Mimosa. Because when you look at the chapter, after he gets trapped, there's some kind of like weird thing that happens to him during the chapter, and I can't really tell if it's an attack from Noelle or Lord Pratique or Mimosa, or if it's Vanica basically just sucking him dry of the blood, knowing that he can't die because of her curse that she has on him, or just possibly not even caring if he ends up dying just because she wants to use his blood in order to attack with. But I mean, I guess regardless, it doesn't really matter, since her mannequin doesn't really get to do much attacking during the chapter, and that's because, as we find out during the flashback, since Lord Pratique fought Vanica at Megikuo prior to this, she knew exactly what her magic abilities were, or at the very least what two types of magic she could use. So the three of them actually came up with a plan as a countermeasure against Vanica in case they did end up coming across her when they eventually took the fight to the Dark Triad, which actually ends up making this fight against a Dark Triad member completely different from the last ones, because when you think about the fight between Yuno and Zeno, and the fights between Asta and the rest of the Black Bulls versus Dante, in those fights, they were completely unprepared against their opponents. Yuno had no idea what the Dark Triads even were, and when it came to Asta and them versus Dante, even though Asta trained for 6 months to fight against each of the Dark Triad members, he had no idea exactly what type of magic that Dante had, so he was underprepared for it. But with this fight, the three characters not only knew exactly what type of magic Vanica had, they also trained and prepared specifically to fight against her, which pretty much showed during the chapter, because Vanica was pretty much on the losing end the entire time. But given the fact that this is really only the first chapter of the fight, and since Vanica is also not in her dark form just yet, it means that Vanica still has more tricks up her sleeve, which, if I had to guess, I would assume that's basically just a copy of the technique that the Witch Queen used to control Asta, but just a little bit different, because if I remember correctly, during the Witch Force arc, the Queen had to have Asta ingest her blood, or had her blood running through Asta's veins in order to basically control his blood. Well, I'm guessing that Vanica is actually going to end up having a technique that's similar to bloodbending from Avatar: The Last Airbender, where she can just freely control the blood and manipulate it and control someone in order to attack a different person. Now, I was kind of disappointed that we didn't really get to see much of Mimosa, because I had put in my head in the last review that we would get this kind of cool transformation from her, since she was the only one of the three that didn't transform in the last chapter. Then maybe this would lead to her basically revealing some kind of like big transformation, kind of like how her floral dress is like her healing technique is like a transformation in that sense. I was hoping that she would get some kind of like attack form from that, but you know, the only thing we actually really see her do in this chapter is use some kind of vine attack, which I don't think we ever actually seen her use prior to this. But she uses some kind of vine attack to basically immobilize the Dark Apostle. Now, the fight's still going on, so we could still see her get some kind of transformation. But I was really hoping that we would spend this first chapter, or this first part of the fight, focusing on her and, you know, seeing that transformation, and then moving on to Vanica versus Noelle and Lord Pratique. And you know what, speaking of Lord Pratique, we actually get this really cool and interesting moment with her. Because, alright, after Vanica starts just spilling the beans of exactly what their plan is, because Vanica just doesn't care. I mean, and it goes with her yandere kind of personality, where when everyone else is asking her questions, she just kind of tells them to shut up. But the second Lord Pratique starts asking her questions and, you know, trying to get details out of her exactly what their plan is, she just starts spilling the beans like nothing. Like, she doesn't really care, because she knows at the end of the day, she's going to end up winning. So she just kind of just like monologuing and letting them find out all this information. And even though she doesn't give them the full details, just off of the little bits that she gives Lord Pratique, we see Lord Pratique go like inside her mind in like a split second. Literally, like, this is all taking place in like a split second of time. She goes inside her mind, and this is when we end up finding out that each queen or princess of the Heart Kingdom inherits the abilities and knowledge of the previous one. And because of this, she has a like vast like mental library of knowledge just ready at her disposal. And through this, she ends up finding out exactly what the Dark Triad are planning. And because she now knows exactly what they're planning on doing, she urges Noelle and Mimosa to fight as hard as they can, because under no circumstances can they let the Dark Triad succeed in their plan. because what she ends up revealing to them is that their plan is to basically summon the demons, which we already know, and if their plan succeeds, 90%, and this might just be a translation error, but 90% of human life on their continent would die off. We also get to see Lord Pachika's Mana Zone in this chapter, which is basically just a giant water bubble that encompasses the entire area they're in. And what it ends up doing is actually having the attack power of all Vanica's attacks. But at the same time, because Noelle is also a water elemental or uses water elemental magic, it doubles, or I actually don't know if it said double or not, but it basically boosts her magical abilities. And this is when we get the most epic moment of the entire chapter, literally at the end of the chapter anyway. We get the reveal of Noelle's brand new transformation, her Valkyrie armor mermaid dress, which is literally just as you can expect. And actually, if you've seen the thumbnail of this video, that's pretty much it. She gets a mermaid-like outfit. It's really revealing, but she gets a mermaid-like outfit that allows her to assumedly swim throughout the Lord Pachika's Mana Zone fluently, like she's just flying through air like she could with her Valkyrie armor. Now, if I'm being perfectly honest, even though that moment was extremely epic and should have, just completely filled my thoughts, the thing I was thinking about the most at the end of the chapter was the fact that we get that small panel of Vanica spitting up blood and her smiling. And that moment has me extremely nervous as to what she's going to do in the next chapter. And my main thought right now is that, alright, we see her spitting up blood, and we know that she has blood magic. And I'm starting to wonder that maybe because they're in that giant bubble, that maybe somehow Vanica spitting up blood would be enough to her basically use her blood to control that water, the Mana Zone, and use it as a way to attack against them. But you know what, I could just be honestly overthinking things. Maybe that smile and the blood at the end doesn't really mean anything. Like, she's probably not going to use it to take over Lord Pachika's Mana Zone. Maybe she'll just, I don't know, maybe she's just smiling because of the fact that she's starting to have fun during the fight. Maybe she's smiling because she recognizes Noelle now she gets a really clear and up-close look at her, realizing that she looks just like her mom. Or maybe Megikuo, maybe if Vanica didn't actually fight against Noelle's mom prior to this, maybe Megikuo was like, hey, you know what? She looks just like someone I fought before in the past, and telling Vanica all of this in her head, like, hey, you can probably use this information I'm giving you against her to kind of catch her off guard and get us an easy win in the fight by having her go all out because she gets angry. That could actually end up being what Tabata ends up going with this. We don't know. This is actually the first. Well, technically, Zeno was connected to Yuno's past, but this is technically the first character that we've seen him go up against the Dark Tribe members who has a real connection to them. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for the video. There's not really much else to talk about from the chapter. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories on the chapter, especially when it comes to Noelle's new form. How much did you like that? And I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.